I never imagined that one day, my own son would turn his back on me. You raise a child with love, sacrifice your comfort, and believe, no matter what, the bond of family can't be broken. But life has a cruel way of proving you wrong. It all started a few months before my son, Ethan, was supposed to get married. He was my only child, my pride, my world. His fiancée, Claire, seemed lovely when I first met her. Sweet, polite, always with that practiced smile that could light up a room or hide a storm. I couldn't tell which, back then. Ethan had always been close to me, maybe too close after his father passed away when he was just 13. We went through everything together. His college applications, his first heartbreak, his job interviews. So when he called one evening and said, "Mom, I have some exciting news," I thought, maybe life was finally giving us both something beautiful again. "Claire and I are getting married," he said, his voice full of joy. I cried, not out of sadness, but because I'd waited so long to see him happy again. I immediately offered to help with the wedding. The venue, catering, even the guest list, I wanted everything to be perfect. But from that moment on, something began to shift. At first, it was subtle. Ethan became distant. Calls grew shorter, visits less frequent. When I asked about wedding plans, he'd say, "Claire's family is handling most of it." That stung, but I didn't press. Maybe it was just stress, I told myself. Then one evening, I got an email, not from Ethan, but from Claire. It was a polite message, coldly written. "Hi Mrs. Collins. We're finalizing our guest list and want to keep things intimate. I hope you understand if some extended family members aren't included." It didn't mention me directly, but something about that message didn't sit right. A mother doesn't just hope to be included, it's her son's wedding. So I called Ethan. "Honey, Claire emailed me about the guest list. Am I still on it?" He hesitated. Then he said the words I'll never forget. "Mom, Claire and I talked, and we think it's best if you don't attend the wedding." For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. "Ethan, what are you saying?" "It's nothing personal, Mom. Claire thinks it might be uncomfortable, you and her parents never really clicked. We'll record everything for you, okay?" That sentence, "we'll record everything for you," cut deeper than anything I'd ever heard. I'd raised him. Fed him. Stood by him through every storm. And now I was being told to watch his wedding like some stranger behind a screen. I didn't yell. I didn't cry, not right then. I just whispered, "All right, Ethan. If that's what makes you happy." When the call ended, I sat there in silence for hours. Every picture of him on my wall felt like a reminder of how far apart we'd grown. For weeks, I tried to convince myself it wasn't his fault. Maybe Claire was manipulating him. Maybe he'd come around. But the wedding day came and went. No invitation. No call. Just silence. Until, 1 week later. I opened my mailbox and found an envelope, elegant, white, with gold lettering. My heart leapt, maybe it was a thank you card? Or an apology? But when I tore it open, my hand started shaking. Inside was a typed letter and a printed invoice, a bill. $190,000. The note said, "Dear Mom, we hope you can help us cover the wedding and honeymoon expenses. It's tradition for parents to contribute, and since you couldn't attend, this would mean the world to us." I just stared at it, disbelief turning into anger, anger into heartbreak. I had been banned from the wedding, and now, they were asking me to pay for it. That night, I sat by the window, staring into the dark. Something inside me changed. It wasn't just about money, it was about respect, love, betrayal. And in that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. If they thought they could use me and walk away without consequences, they had no idea who they were dealing with. After I read that letter, I sat frozen. My eyes went over those lines again and again, hoping I'd misread something, maybe it was a joke, a misunderstanding, anything but what it looked like. But it wasn't. My son, the same boy who used to run into my arms after school, who once promised me he'd take care of me when I grew old, had banned me from his wedding and then asked me to pay for it. I folded the letter neatly, placed it on my kitchen table, and just stared. It wasn't about the money. I could have afforded some of it, sure. But the audacity of it, the coldness, that's what hurt the most. For 2 nights, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice in my head, "Mom, Claire thinks it's best if you don't come." It was like every word had been carefully chosen to cut me down, to make me feel small, disposable. Finally, I decided to do what I'd never done before, dig deeper. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, unnatural. Ethan had changed too suddenly. The distance, the excuses, the way he always said, "Claire thinks," instead of "I think." I knew then that Claire wasn't just behind this, she was controlling it. So, I started to look for answers. First, I called my old friend Martha, who still lived in the same neighborhood as Claire's parents. Martha always had an ear for gossip, the harmless kind, but also the revealing kind. When I told her what had happened, she gasped. "Wait, they banned you?" "Oh, sweetheart, I heard the strangest thing. Claire's family has been talking about how they covered most of the wedding themselves. But now that you mention it, they've been hinting that Ethan's mother will settle the bill later." My heart sank. So that was it. This wasn't about family traditions. It was about using me. Martha continued, "And that honeymoon? They're planning something extravagant, a month-long trip to Europe. It's all over social media. Flights, hotels, the works." That night, I went on Claire's public profile. And there it was, a photo from the wedding, perfectly staged, Ethan and Claire smiling beneath a floral arch, holding champagne glasses. The caption read, "Starting forever with my soulmate ring sparkles, thankful to everyone who made this dream possible." Below the post, a comment from Claire's mother caught my eye. "Such a perfect day, thanks to everyone who contributed generously." Everyone who contributed generously. I clenched my jaw. They were expecting me to pay, not hoping, not asking politely, but counting on it. Something inside me snapped that night. The next morning, I opened my laptop, took out that printed invoice, and studied it closely. Every line item was listed, the venue, catering, photography, even a line that said honeymoon package upgrade. It was detailed, almost professionally prepared. I scrolled to the bottom, there was even a due date. After I read that letter, I sat frozen. My eyes went over those lines again and again, hoping I'd misread something, maybe it was a joke, a misunderstanding, anything but what it looked like. But it wasn't. My son, the same boy who used to run into my arms after school, who once promised me he'd take care of me when I grew old, had banned me from his wedding and then asked me to pay for it. I folded the letter neatly, placed it on my kitchen table, and just stared. It wasn't about the money. I could have afforded some of it, sure. But the audacity of it, the coldness, that's what hurt the most. For 2 nights, I didn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice in my head, "Mom, Claire thinks it's best if you don't come." It was like every word had been carefully chosen to cut me down, to make me feel small, disposable. Finally, I decided to do what I'd never done before, dig deeper. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, unnatural. Ethan had changed too suddenly. The distance, the excuses, the way he always said, "Claire thinks," instead of "I think." I knew then that Claire wasn't just behind this, she was controlling it. So, I started to look for answers. First, I called my old friend Martha, who still lived in the same neighborhood as Claire's parents. Martha always had an ear for gossip, the harmless kind, but also the revealing kind. When I told her what had happened, she gasped. "Wait, they banned you?" "Oh, sweetheart, I heard the strangest thing. Claire's family has been talking about how they covered most of the wedding themselves. But now that you mention it, they've been hinting that Ethan's mother will settle the bill later." My heart sank. So that was it. This wasn't about family traditions. It was about using me. Martha continued, and that honeymoon? They're planning something extravagant, a month-long trip to Europe. It's all over social media. Flights, hotels, the works. That night, I went on Claire's public profile. And there it was, a photo from the wedding, perfectly staged, Ethan and Claire smiling beneath a floral arch, holding champagne glasses. The caption read, "Starting forever with my soulmate ring sparkles, thankful to everyone who made this dream possible." Below the post, a comment from Claire's mother caught my eye. "Such a perfect day, thanks to everyone who contributed generously." Everyone who contributed generously. I clenched my jaw. They were expecting me to pay, not hoping, not asking politely, but counting on it. Something inside me snapped that night. The next morning, I opened my laptop, took out that printed invoice, and studied it closely. Every line item was listed, the venue, catering, photography, even a line that said honeymoon package upgrade. It was detailed, almost professionally prepared. I scrolled to the bottom, there was even a due date. As if I were a client. I wanted to call Ethan right then, to scream, to demand answers, but instead, I took a deep breath. If I'd learned anything in life, it was that revenge tastes better when served quietly. So, instead of reacting, I began to plan. I called a lawyer, an old friend from work, just to ask a few questions. I told her the situation in vague terms. She laughed softly and said, "You know, technically, unless you sign something, you owe them nothing. But you could send a reply that looks official, just to make them think twice." That gave me an idea. I spent the next few days crafting a response that looked formal, detailed, even intimidating. It read, "Dear Ethan and Claire. Thank you for your invoice regarding your recent wedding and honeymoon expenses. Unfortunately, our family contributions are reserved for participants and invitees of the event. Since I was not invited to attend, I am unable to process your request. Wishing you both a lifetime of financial independence and mutual respect. Mom." I signed it neatly, printed it, and mailed it back. Part of me felt satisfied, but part of me still ached. Because even though I was standing up for myself, deep down I wished I didn't have to. A few days later, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. For the first time in weeks. I stared at the screen. My hands trembled. Should I answer? Yes, I decided. "Mom?" His voice was tense. "Did you send that letter?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I did. I thought it was appropriate, given the situation." "Appropriate?" he snapped. "Claire's parents are furious. They said you embarrassed them. Do you know how childish that looked?" "Childish?" I repeated softly. "Ethan, you banned me from your wedding. And now you want my money?" I think childish doesn't begin to cover it. There was silence. Then he said something that broke me all over again. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Maybe you should just accept that Claire's my family now." Claire's my family now. It was like being erased from my own son's life. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just said quietly, "All right, Ethan. I hope she gives you everything you're looking for." When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, heart heavy, but oddly calm. Because now, I knew the truth. This wasn't just betrayal, it was transformation. My son wasn't the boy I raised anymore. He'd become someone else, someone shaped by greed, pride, and control. And if I wanted to get through this, I couldn't think like a mother anymore. I had to think like someone who'd been wronged. That's when the next part of my plan started to take shape. I would find out exactly what Claire and her family were hiding, and when the time came, I would make sure everyone saw the truth. Not through anger. Not through shouting. But through a calm, unstoppable revelation that would expose them for who they really were. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this much. They wanted my money. Soon, they'd realize that the cost of betraying me would be far greater than $190,000. I've heard people say that betrayal doesn't come from enemies, it comes from the ones you die for. I never truly understood that, until now. After that last call with Ethan, I told myself I needed space. Space to think, to breathe, to not let my heart take over my mind. But quiet nights only made the pain louder. I kept replaying everything, the laughter we used to share, the way he'd call me mama even after he turned 20, the look in his eyes when he graduated. And now, this version of him. Cold. Detached. Controlled. Something inside me whispered, this isn't just Claire's influence. This was deeper. Something darker. One night, while sorting old folders on my laptop, I found something that would change everything. It was an email, months old, buried under newsletters and spam. The subject line read: Wedding coordination, confirmation of financial details. At first, I thought it was just one of those automated messages vendors send. But when I opened it, my heart stopped. It was a payment confirmation. Under my name. My address. My email. The message thanked me for committing to cover 60% of the wedding expenses, totaling nearly $120,000. Attached was a digital signature, mine. Except, it wasn't. The signature looked similar, but not exact. Someone had copied it. I sat there, staring at the screen, my chest tightening. How long had this been in motion? How could they even have access to my information? Then I remembered, a few months before the wedding, Ethan had borrowed my laptop, saying he needed to print some documents. I didn't think much of it at the time. He must have saved my files, my signature image, and used it. The realization hit me like a storm. This wasn't just betrayal. This was fraud. And suddenly, everything started making sense. The sudden distance. The secrecy. The manipulation. Claire hadn't just turned my son against me, she had used him. My hands trembled as I forwarded the email to my lawyer friend, Lisa. Within an hour, she called back. Margaret, she said, her voice sharp. This is serious. Whoever sent this committed identity fraud. You could press charges. But I didn't want to press charges, not yet. I didn't want to destroy Ethan. I wanted him to see what he had done. Lisa sighed. All right. But at least secure your accounts. Check your credit reports. Make sure they didn't open anything under your name. I did. And that's when betrayal turned into pure disbelief. There it was, a loan application for a destination event package, listed under my credit. Approved 2 months ago. $40,000. They had used my information to pay for their honeymoon. For a few moments, I couldn't move. My breath came shallow. My own son had helped forge my signature, to fund his dream wedding and honeymoon. The tears came, unstoppable. Not from anger, from heartbreak. Because this wasn't just a mistake. This was a choice. The next morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection seemed older, but stronger. The sadness was still there, but something else had replaced it, resolve. I wasn't going to beg for an apology. I wasn't going to lecture Ethan or cry to him on the phone. No. I was going to show them, carefully, calmly, what happens when you betray someone who gave you everything. But first, I needed proof. For the next week, I quietly collected every document, every message, every screenshot. I contacted the wedding venue pretending to confirm payment completion. They sent me a receipt with my name listed as the primary sponsor. Each file I saved felt like another knife twisting in my chest. But I kept going. When I had everything, I called Ethan. My hand shook slightly as the phone rang, but I steadied my voice. Ethan, I began softly, I just want to talk. No arguments. Just 5 minutes. He hesitated. All right, Mom. What do you want? I just wanted to make sure everything with the wedding bills is sorted out, I said. Since my name is listed as the payer, I wouldn't want you or Claire to face any confusion later. There was a pause. Then his tone changed, nervous, defensive. What do you mean, your name is listed? Oh, don't worry, I said gently. I have the receipts, the emails, even the loan document. I just wanted to check if it was intentional, or if I should send it to the authorities for clarification. Silence. Then he whispered, Mom, please don't. I took a slow breath. Why, Ethan? Why would you do this to me? He stammered, it wasn't my idea. Claire said it was just a formality, that you'd pay anyway. She said you wouldn't care, and if I didn't sign, she'd call off the wedding. I didn't want to lose her, Mom. His words fell like shards of glass. I wanted to scream. To tell him that love built on manipulation wasn't love at all. But I didn't. I just said quietly, you already lost something, Ethan. You just don't realize it yet. I hung up. For the rest of the day, I sat by the window again, watching the world go by. And slowly, my heartbreak hardened into determination. If Claire had turned my son into a pawn for her own gain, I was going to expose her. Not to humiliate, not to destroy, but to free Ethan from her control. Because now, it wasn't just about the money or the betrayal, it was about justice. And justice, I've learned, sometimes comes dressed as calm, polite revenge. That evening, I wrote an email, not to Ethan, not to Claire, but to the venue manager, loan officer, and credit agency. I attached proof of the forgery and requested a fraud investigation. I didn't even have to press charges yet. Just one small domino. By the next morning, I got a call. The venue had frozen the remaining balance under investigation. The loan company had flagged the account for misuse. Claire's perfect little world, the one she built on deceit, had just started to crack. And I wasn't done yet. When I pressed send on that final email, I felt something I hadn't in months, peace. Not joy. Not triumph. Just quiet, steady peace. I had done what I needed to do, protect myself and let the truth begin to surface. But what I didn't expect was how quickly everything would start to unravel. It began with a phone call 2 days later. Mrs. Collins, the voice said. This is Daniel from Crestview Bank. We've received your fraud report. I just wanted to confirm, we have frozen the loan under your name pending investigation. We'll also be contacting the secondary applicants. Secondary applicants? I asked. Yes, Daniel replied. Your son, Ethan Collins, and his spouse, Claire Adams. I closed my eyes. There it was, the first crack in their perfect picture. Later that afternoon, another email came in, this time from the wedding venue. Dear Mrs. Collins. We have temporarily suspended the payment account linked to your name while our legal team investigates the matter. We've also contacted the event planners listed on the contract for clarification. I almost felt bad for Claire. Almost. Because I knew her type, people who build their lives like glass castles, all shine and reflection. But the moment a single stone is thrown, everything shatters. That weekend, I decided to do something I hadn't done since the wedding fiasco began. I dressed up, put on a simple necklace Ethan had made for me when he was 10, and went to the local cafe I used to love. I just needed to breathe, to remember who I was outside of all this chaos. But fate has a strange way of showing up when you least expect it. I was stirring my coffee when I heard 2 familiar voices behind me. Claire's parents. They hadn't seen me, they were too busy talking loudly about the situation. I told Claire she went too far, her mother was saying. Now the bank's involved. Do you know what this could do to our reputation? Her father sighed. Ethan should have handled his mother better. He's weak. That woman raised a boy, not a man. My fingers tightened around my cup. For a moment, I considered walking out. But then, I realized something important. These people weren't just arrogant, they were careless. And careless people always leave trails. I quietly paid for my coffee, left a generous tip, and followed them outside, keeping a safe distance. They stopped by their car, still arguing. Claire's mother waved a folder angrily. This is what started it. Why did Claire think she could fake a signature and get away with it? My heart skipped a beat. A folder. Evidence. I didn't need to confront them. All I needed was patience. As soon as they drove off, I noted the license plate and made a call to Lisa, my lawyer friend. Lisa, I think I just overheard Claire's parents admitting to the forgery, I said. Lisa paused. Do you want me to involve my investigator? Yes, I whispered. Quietly. Over the next week, things spiraled for Claire and Ethan. The bank had frozen their accounts. The venue demanded verification. Even the travel agency called me, asking to confirm who actually owned the honeymoon package. When I told them the truth, they said they'd suspend the tickets immediately. I imagined Claire's reaction when she got that call, her perfectly planned honeymoon turning into a nightmare. But the real breaking point came 3 days later. Ethan showed up at my door. I hadn't seen him in months. His face looked pale, anxious. He knocked twice, hesitated, then whispered, "Mom, can I come in?" I let him. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to see if there was still a trace of the son I once knew. He stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes downcast. "Everything's falling apart," he said. "The bank froze our funds. Claire's furious. She says it's all your fault." I raised an eyebrow. My fault? For not paying a bill I never agreed to? He sighed. "Mom, you don't understand. Claire said it was just paperwork. She said you knew." I believed her. Believed her? I said softly. "Even after she banned me from your wedding?" He looked away. "I didn't know she'd go that far. I thought she just wanted things her way." "She wanted control, Ethan," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "And she got it, by turning you against your own mother." He rubbed his face. "Mom, what do I do?" For a long moment, I didn't answer. Then, finally, I said, "You tell the truth." He looked at me, startled. "To who?" "To everyone," I said. "The bank. The venue. And most importantly, to yourself." He nodded slowly, tears filling his eyes. "I messed up, didn't I?" I reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Yes. But admitting it is the first step toward fixing it." 2 days later, Lisa called with an update. "Margaret, you won't believe this," she said. "My investigator got hold of a recording, Claire's parents at a dinner, talking openly about how Claire forged your documents. It's clean, admissible evidence. You're officially in the clear." I exhaled deeply. Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. I could clear my name. But I couldn't clear the pain of knowing my son had been part of it, even if unwillingly. Still, I wasn't out for destruction. I didn't want arrests or public shame. What I wanted was truth. So, with Lisa's help, I drafted one final message, an open letter to the wedding vendors, the bank, and even Claire's family. It read, "To all concerned, I have provided verified documentation confirming the fraudulent use of my identity in connection with Ethan and Claire Collins' wedding. I wish no harm upon anyone involved. However, I expect accountability and closure. May this serve as a reminder that love built on lies eventually collapses under its own weight. Margaret Collins." Lisa called it poetic justice. I called it peace. The following week, Claire moved out of their shared apartment. Ethan told me later that she'd blamed him for everything, claiming he ruined their future. But deep down, I knew this was just the truth revealing itself, the kind of truth no one can run from forever. He started visiting again. At first awkwardly, then more often. He'd sit at the table, sometimes silent, sometimes remorseful. One evening, he finally said what I'd been waiting to hear. "Mom, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of it." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy I once knew, the boy who used to bring me flowers from the backyard and promised to buy me a house one day. You made mistakes, I said gently. But you're still my son. Just promise me something, never let anyone make you forget who you are again. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I promise. And for the first time in months, we hugged. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the end. But it was a start. It's a dangerous word, sharp, cold, and heavy with history. But the truth is, I wasn't after destruction. I wanted something cleaner, something quieter, something that stayed. I didn't want to ruin anyone. I wanted the truth to live longer than their lies. And so, I began my plan, not out of anger, but out of calm precision. Lisa and I sat across the dining table, papers spread between us like puzzle pieces. Everything you need is here, she said, tapping her pen. Every email, text, and document proving what they did. If you want to make it public, I'll support you. I hesitated. I don't want to humiliate Ethan, I said softly. But I do want people to know what really happened. Lisa nodded. Then we'll tell the truth, tastefully. Let the story speak for itself. She helped me compile a file, not a scandal, but a statement. We titled it, Page Facing Up: The Truth About the $190,000 Wedding Bill. It included proof of forgery, screenshots of Claire's messages, and the correspondence with the bank and venue. Nothing exaggerated, nothing cruel, just fact after fact, layered with quiet dignity. Lisa uploaded the file privately to the legal portal and notified all parties involved. No drama. No shouting. Just exposure through truth. By that night, 3 of the vendors had already emailed apologies. One even refunded Ethan and Claire's deposits, citing fraudulent authorization. That was just the beginning. People think revenge means making others suffer. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, is making them see themselves clearly. So, I gave Claire a mirror. A few days later, I mailed her a simple brown envelope. Inside was a copy of the original wedding bill, the one she'd tried to make me pay, with a sticky note that read, "The price of pretending always comes due. M. No anger. No threats. Just truth wrapped in silence." I didn't hear from her for a while. But I didn't need to. Because when someone builds their life on manipulation, silence is the one sound they can't stand. It was Ethan who called next. "Mom," he said quietly, "people are talking. The vendors, the planner, even Claire's friends. They all know what happened." I paused. "How do you feel about that?" He sighed. Embarrassed. But also, relieved. I don't have to defend lies anymore. That was the moment I realized my revenge had already worked, not because others were talking, but because he was seeing. The real justice wasn't in exposing Claire. It was in freeing Ethan from her manipulation. Still, I knew the story wasn't over. Not until I faced Claire one last time. It happened on a gray Thursday afternoon. I was leaving the grocery store when I saw her, standing near her car, sunglasses on, pretending to be on a call. When our eyes met, she froze. Then she smiled, that tight, polished smile she always wore when she was cornered. "Mrs. Collins," she said, voice dripping with forced politeness. "Fancy seeing you here." "Claire," I said calmly. "It's been eventful, hasn't it?" Her lips tightened. "I suppose congratulations are in order. You got what you wanted." I tilted my head. "What I wanted?" She crossed her arms. "To make me look bad. To ruin my reputation. To turn Ethan against me." I let out a quiet laugh. "No, Claire. You did that all by yourself." She flinched, then stepped closer. "You think you're the victim? You're the reason Ethan doesn't believe in himself. You made him weak." For the first time I looked at her, really looked, and saw what she was, a frightened woman masking her insecurity with control. "No," I said softly. "Ethan isn't weak. He just forgot who he was trying to please." She stared at me, her facade cracking. You think you've won? I smiled faintly. There are no winners in lies, Claire. Only lessons. And then I turned and walked away. I didn't need to raise my voice. Because sometimes silence is louder than anger. A week later, Ethan stopped by again. He looked different, lighter somehow. He handed me a small envelope. What's this? I asked. He smiled sadly. A check. My share of the loan refund. I want you to have it. I shook my head. No, Ethan. Keep it. Use it to start over. He looked down. Mom. Claire's gone. She moved back with her parents. I've been thinking about apologizing publicly. Publicly? I asked. He nodded. On social media. You deserve that. Everyone saw me treat you terribly, and they should see me own up to it. My chest tightened. You don't owe me that. He smiled weakly. Maybe not. But I owe it to myself. And he did it. That night, he posted a simple message. Sometimes, we believe the wrong people. I hurt the one person who always had my back, my mother. She didn't deserve what I did to her. I'm grateful she forgave me when I didn't even forgive myself. The comments poured in, support, understanding, even admiration. Not for the drama, but for the honesty. That was the real revenge. Not humiliation, not destruction, but truth laid bare, where everyone could see the difference between pretense and authenticity. Weeks passed. Life found a new rhythm. The air in my home felt lighter. I began gardening again, baking on weekends, even joining a small reading club in town. And one morning, as sunlight filtered through my kitchen window, I found an old photo tucked inside my recipe book, Ethan at age 7, grinning with a missing tooth, holding a sign that read Mom's hero. I smiled. Maybe I wasn't his hero now. But I was his reminder that love, when tested by betrayal, doesn't vanish. It just becomes wiser. I often get asked if I'd do anything differently. If I'd let it all slide instead of exposing the truth. But then I think of the woman I used to be, the one who stayed silent, who kept peace at the cost of her dignity. And I realize, this wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Reclaiming my name. My peace. My self-respect. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about what you take from others. It's about what you take back for yourself. For weeks, things had been quiet. Too quiet. I'd thought it was over, that the truth had done its work, that peace had finally settled. But life has a way of testing your peace just when you think you've found it. It was a crisp Friday morning when Ethan called me, voice shaking. Mom, she's here. I froze. Who? Claire. She showed up at my apartment. She says she wants to talk. She's threatening to go to the media and twist everything. I took a slow breath. Don't say a word to her until I get there. He hesitated. Mom, I can handle it. No, Ethan, I interrupted. You've handled enough. Let me finish what I started. When I arrived, Claire was standing in the doorway, arms folded, still wearing her armor of elegance, the polished smile, the designer jacket, the poise that used to fool everyone. But not anymore. Mrs. Collins, she said coldly. I was hoping we could talk. Ethan stepped back to let me in, tension thick in the air. Talk? I said. Or spin another story? Her lips curved slightly. You think you've won, don't you? Everyone's turned against me. The vendors, the planners, even Ethan. You made me look like a liar. I met her gaze steadily. You didn't need my help to look like that. She flinched, just a flicker, but I saw it. Do you have any idea what I've lost? She snapped. My reputation, my connections, everything I worked for. I tilted my head. Then maybe you should have built it on truth. Her eyes narrowed. You think this little redemption act makes you noble? You humiliated me. You humiliated my family. I took a slow step forward. You forged my name on a loan. You tried to make me pay for your fantasy. You turned my son against me. You don't get to play the victim now. For a moment, there was silence, that heavy silence before the truth finally breaks through the noise. And then Ethan spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. She's right, Claire. You lied to me. You used me. Claire turned to him, disbelief flashing across her face. Ethan, no, I did it for us. For our future. Our future, he cut her off. You ruined that the moment you made my mother your enemy. She stared at him, mouth open but words frozen. I believed every lie you told me, he continued, voice trembling. You said she was jealous, controlling, selfish. And I believed it because I wanted to make you happy. But all this time, it was you who wanted control. Claire's face hardened. You're pathetic. You think you can just blame me for your weak family? Fine. Keep your mother. Keep your pity. You'll end up just like her, alone and bitter. Ethan shook his head. Maybe. But at least I'll be honest. She let out a bitter laugh, grabbed her purse, and stormed toward the door. But before she left, she turned to me, her voice trembling with anger. You'll regret this. Both of you. I met her gaze calmly. The only thing I regret is trusting you to love my son. And with that, she was gone. The door clicked shut. Silence filled the apartment. Ethan sat down, head in his hands. She's really gone, he said softly. After everything, it's finally over. I placed a hand on his shoulder. It's not over, Ethan. It's just the end of a painful chapter. Now, you get to write a new one. He nodded, eyes glistening. I don't even know where to start. I smiled faintly. Start with truth. It's the only foundation that doesn't crumble. In the days that followed, something remarkable happened. The story, not a scandal, but the truth, began to ripple through the community. People who had once whispered behind my back now stopped me in the grocery store to apologize. Vendors who'd believed Claire reached out to thank me for my honesty. Even the local paper published a small editorial about financial fraud awareness, inspired by an unnamed case, but everyone knew. And for once, the narrative wasn't twisted. It was balanced. Real. Human. One evening, Ethan came by with something in his hands, a simple wooden frame. Inside it was a printed copy of his social post. Beneath it, in neat letters, he'd added, "Truth doesn't destroy, it reveals." He placed it on the mantel and smiled. "So we don't forget," he said. I hugged him. "We won't." For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Not the fleeting light of victory, but the deep, steady light of peace. A week later, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a single line. You were right. I built everything on lies. I'm sorry. It wasn't signed. But I knew who it was from. I stood there, holding the letter, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. Because that, right there, was the true climax of it all. Not the confrontation, not the exposure, not even Ethan's apology. It was the moment the person who betrayed me finally faced themselves. That's when I realized something profound. Real revenge isn't loud. It doesn't demand an audience. It's quiet, internal, a mirror turning slowly toward the guilty. I walked outside, letter in hand, as the evening sun melted into the horizon. The air was cool, soft, forgiving. I thought of everything that had happened, the betrayal, the humiliation, the long nights of doubt, and then I thought of how far I'd come. From being banned from my own son's wedding to standing here, stronger, freer, at peace. I smiled to myself and whispered, I didn't lose my son. I just helped him find his way back. The wind carried the words away, and with it, the last pieces of anger I'd been holding on to. Later that night, Ethan and I sat on the porch with 2 mugs of tea, quiet and content. He glanced at me and said, "Mom, do you ever miss her?" I thought for a moment. No. I miss who I thought she was. But I'm grateful for who she helped me become. He smiled. You really are stronger than anyone I know. I laughed softly. Maybe. But strength doesn't mean never breaking, Ethan. It means learning how to rebuild. He nodded, looking out at the night sky. Then maybe we both rebuilt. And in that still moment, mother and son, sitting together under a sky full of second chances. I knew the story had finally reached its true climax. Not the end of a fight, but the beginning of forgiveness. Time has a gentle way of softening even the sharpest memories. Months passed since the confrontation with Claire, months that felt like finally breathing after years of holding my breath. Life didn't return to the way it was before, it became something new. Calmer. Wiser. Simpler. I started volunteering at a small community center, helping older parents understand online safety and financial awareness. It felt good, turning my pain into purpose. One afternoon, after a class, a woman came up to me. She looked nervous. She said, "I heard about your story, Mrs. Collins. My daughter's going through something similar, she's being manipulated by her fiancé. What should I do?" I took her hand gently and said, "Don't fight through anger. Fight through truth. You can't control the choices others make, but you can choose your peace." She smiled, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "Thank you." And for the first time, I realized, maybe my story wasn't just a tragedy. Maybe it was a lesson. Ethan and I found a rhythm again. Every Sunday, he came over for dinner, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with stories, sometimes just silence and peace. One evening, as we washed dishes together, he said, "You know, Mom, I used to think you were just being controlling. But now I see, you were just trying to protect me." I smiled softly. Love can look like control when seen through the eyes of pride. He nodded slowly. Claire's family tried to reach out. They wanted to apologize, but I told them I wasn't ready. "That's okay," I said. "Forgiveness isn't a race. It's a process. You'll get there." He looked at me, his eyes reflecting something new, humility, maybe even gratitude. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he said quietly. And that moment felt like the real closure. Not court documents. Not apologies. Not exposure. Just a mother and son rebuilding what betrayal tried to break. I often think back to the beginning, that day I received the wedding invitation without my name, the humiliation of being banned from my own child's biggest moment. If someone told me then that I'd one day forgive, I would have laughed. But forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering it without letting it poison you anymore. Yes, there were nights when anger felt easier than peace. If you've listened this far, remember this. Sometimes, life doesn't give you justice in the way you expect. But if you stand in truth long enough, it gives you something far greater, clarity. The people who betray you teach you boundaries. The ones who lie about you teach you patience. And the ones who leave you teach you how to stand alone. Revenge isn't fire. It's not shouting or chaos. It's peace, the kind that unsettles the guilty and strengthens the honest. Because when you stop chasing closure from others, you start finding it within yourself. He banned me from his wedding, and sent me the bill for his dreams. But in the end, I paid nothing, and gained everything. My revenge wasn't loud. It was silent, steady, and fair. I didn't destroy him. I simply reminded him who I truly was. And that was enough. Dove truth doesn't destroy. It reveals.